Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Roadie Psychology Podcast, the podcast where travel meets psychology. My name is Pamela, and you guessed it, I'm a psychologist with a passion for travel. In Roadie Psychology, we meet travelers and psychologists who share their adventure stories through concepts of psychology. Over the past few years, there has been more and more awareness about mental health. Still, it seems like while more people are becoming familiar with terms like anxiety, depression, ADHD, autism, there remains a stigma around mental disorders. Mental illnesses are health conditions involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior, or a combination of these. They are associated with distress or problems functioning in social, work, or family activities. And while for some people it is easy enough to say that they are suffering from a mental disorder, for others it is a lot more difficult to understand. Mental health disorders can look very different from one person to another. And it is easy to feel isolated, to feel like no one else will understand what you are going through. And so, some people have started sharing the story, for themselves or for others. People started to talk. Our stories are unique, and when there is no other story that we can relate to, sharing our own can help us in many ways. Stories are powerful. When we share our stories, we take a different perspective. We start seeing our life and what is happening to us in a new way. We start seeing patterns, behaviors, causes, and reactions to things. We broaden our perspective and we build upon it. Sharing our stories helps us understand ourselves. They also help us reconnect with what matters to us, the constant in our lives, our values, our resources. Then, our story might resonate with other people. Maybe there is this one person that is now where you were 5 years ago. Maybe your words will give them hope. Maybe they won't feel as lonely. Words can touch people, and your story may help others more than you think. And lastly, sharing our stories can show us of just how far we've come. Today's episode is the second part of my conversation with Alex. Alex, also known as Sober Yoga Girl, is a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, certified life coach, entrepreneur, podcaster, and entire certified teacher. Alex is the founder of the Mindful Life Practice Community and Sober Curious Yoga. In this episode, we talk about her life abroad, her healing, her big move to Bali, and how important it is to talk about sobriety and alcohol. If you haven't listened to the first part, check out episode 14. So, are you guys ready? Let's hit the road. And so, recently, going back to Bali, you made that dream come true. How did that happen for you?
Yeah, so this has been the wildest thing ever. So I was teaching yoga part-time at gyms and yoga studios around Kuwait and then Abu Dhabi and way back in Canada. So I've been teaching yoga for many, many years, but I always had this idea of like, I would never survive as a yoga teacher. I would never be able to do this full time. And it's been the craziest experience because I ended up at the start of the pandemic teaching some yoga, doing some coaching, some life coaching online on Zoom, never ever thinking that it would turn into what it is now, which is this fully online Zoom yoga community. And so I teach yoga for clients all around the world on Zoom every single day. I run yoga teacher trainings. I do sober coaching where I help people quit drinking and, use these holistic tools of yoga and meditation and mindfulness. And I had this moment in October. So I was doing all this in Abu Dhabi, and I had, moved into this beautiful apartment and set everything up and taken all this time to create this beautiful life there. And then I had this moment where I woke up one day in October and I thought, what am I doing here? I'm running a virtual business where I could be anywhere in the world. So why am I in Abu Dhabi when I want to be in Bali? And so I packed up my whole life within a month. And I think my parents thought that I had completely lost my mind because I just went on social media one day and I was selling my furniture. And the thing is, like, for anyone that's known me, like I talked about my colleague who picked me up for the carpool 5 years ago, and she said I was talking about moving to Bali. So for anyone that's known me over the past 5 years, they know that, it's been my dream. And it seems really sudden and really spontaneous and really crazy. But in reality, it was like this thing in the back of my head. And I just had to finally take the leap and take the jump. So it's been like it's been really spontaneous, but I feel so at home here. Like it's just felt like the for sure right move.
Yeah, it's kind of like you found your place.
Hmm.
And what was the most challenging part about it?
You know what? I actually think that this was the easiest international or city move I've ever had. And so I've moved um, from Toronto to Kingston, and then I moved to Kuwait, and then I moved to Abu Dhabi, and now I moved to Bali. So this is like my third international move, my fourth city move. And I actually found that this was the easiest move because of my online community. So it was like I flew one day, worked on Thursday, flew on Friday, then started working on Saturday. And it's like I have my community there with me every day. And so I actually feel really grounded and really supported. Whereas usually when I get to a new place, it's navigating all the new, trying to make new friendships, trying to find a community. But I actually have felt really connected here in a weird way, even though it's, connected to all my people abroad. But I definitely have still, it's very different. When I moved to Kuwait and Abu Dhabi, I had a job there waiting for me. I had an apartment waiting there for me. And so this time I've been trying to navigate things, and like I still have an apartment, a storage locker full of stuff in Abu Dhabi, and a car. So I need to fly back there and sell my stuff. So I have like all these random odds and sods. But I definitely feel having my international community has been amazing in keeping me grounded during this transition.
I like the term grounded because I feel like it really is your constant, the thing that it just
Hmm.
follows you. And so it's what's attaching you to what you're actually doing, to your values and to why you're doing all of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then how does it feel now then? How long have you been there? 6, 7 weeks, right?
It's actually been about a month. So I moved in mid October. Yeah, I think I flew on October 22nd. So maybe like 5 weeks.
Oh wow. So it's like, how do you feel? Because it's quite recent, but not recent, like not super recent enough. You know what I mean? So is it
Yeah,
still the thrill of I actually did this thing? Is it as reality come back to tell you, hey, this is your life now, or how is it?
I think every single day I have a moment where I'm like, I can't believe that this is my life. Like every day, I'm just so grateful. And I have like ups and downs, like sometimes I get really stressed about money because as an entrepreneur, you just never know when it's coming. Like it's less constant than knowing that your paycheck is coming every single month, right? And sometimes I have moments where I'm like stressed about that. And then I have to step back and be like, Alex, yesterday morning, I was like, I feel like going to the beach today. And so I just booked a hotel and booked a car and came. And it's like, this is incredible that I just have this freedom. It is unbelievable. And it's something I dreamed of. And so it's like, I have to let go of that security and just trust that, the universe is going to provide for me and just embrace this nomadic way of being because it's incredible.
Yeah, just enjoy it as it comes and just take it all
Mhm.
in.
Mhm.
If I may ask, are you still struggling with your mental health, and how do you deal with that now that you've made your dream move?
I have felt ever since I started my business that I no longer really struggle with my mental health. I don't identify with my mood disorder anymore. And I think that's because I'm finally living my purpose. And within my purpose as running my yoga community, a big part of it is the community and the coaching and the sharing circles. And we're constantly creating this space, this safe space to share. And so I have this opportunity to be constantly reflecting and processing and taking care of myself. I'm doing yoga every day, I'm meditating every day. And so I actually wouldn't say that I identify with my mood disorder anymore. And I don't think I experience it anymore the way people do. Like I attended this group session for people with mood disorders and I just felt like I couldn't really relate to the conversation anymore. I once could years ago before I found all these tools, but now it's just not something that's part of my daily experience, which I just feel so grateful for. I do definitely have ups and downs. I have days where I'm less motivated. I have days where I'm less happy, but I think that's like the normal human experience. I think I'm experiencing emotions on a normal human level
Yeah.
right now.
Okay. And I find it interesting that you say you no longer identify with your disorder. Do you feel like you were carrying a label and that it became part of your identity?
Yes, yes. And I think it was one of my biggest things when I first was going through it was I felt like this was this thing that was going to make me unlovable. Something was wrong with me. I was not going to be able to function, relate to people. And I carried this for so long and felt like I couldn't live a normal life because I was born with this thing. And what I realize now is that it is so common for people to have mental health struggles. It's so common. And once you learn the coping skills and you learn the strategies to thrive, it's just something that I'm living with, that's part of my history and part of my past, but it's not who I am and it's not going to hold me back from achieving anything, from living a normal happy life. And I think that's one of the biggest myths or one of the biggest things is people think, oh, I have this diagnosis, this is who I am now and I'm going to have this forever. And the reality is that I don't feel like I have it anymore. I don't feel like I'm experiencing all those struggles that I did for like a decade. And so I think sometimes we get stuck in this diagnosis and think that this is going to be our forever when in reality people can recover and they do.
Yeah, and I really that's what I try to tell when I work with people as well. It's not your identity, it's not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's with you. We don't deny that. And I think it's once you've made that change in your mind that it's not you, it's with you, that I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that makes such a big difference.
So true.
And so, is it important for you to share your story?
Absolutely. And I talk way more openly about my sobriety. In particular, I talk about my mental health. I haven't yet publicly shared like my mood disorder diagnosis. And the reason for that is actually has more to do with I wrote a book about it and I'm in the progress of, getting the book accepted by publishers and getting it published. And so for the moment, I'm at the point where I'm not yet sharing my actual diagnosis. But for many years, I felt like I couldn't tell people my diagnosis because it was so stigmatized. And I thought it would impact my job prospects. I thought that it would, hold me back from, potentially having a leadership role. And I now am at the point where I do so much work in sharing my story. And what I find is that people feel so safe sharing with me. And I've come to realize that the pain that I have experienced is universal, right? So many people have struggled with either mental health and addiction themselves, or it's been in their family, or a friend or someone they love. And the problem is that it's so stigmatized that we don't talk about it, and then we think that we're the only person in the world suffering, right? So as soon as we start to share our story, we realize that that pain is felt by others, and that is like one of the most comforting things in the world. And so I will never stop sharing about it because I found that it's helped me and it's helped so many others.
Yeah, because people can finally relate and then they're no longer alone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so about that book, um, don't disclose anything you don't want to, obviously. Um, but when do you think that you could share it with people? When do you think that it finally come out? And how do you feel about actually writing your story? Because that's also different. You have a podcast, you share about it out loud, but
Mhm.
putting words, putting reflection into like writing words can be quite powerful, actually.
Oh my gosh, writing my book was the best thing I have ever done. And I started writing it in 2020. I never thought that it would become what it turned into. And it was amazing because there were parts of it that I never thought, when I set out to write the story, I never thought that it would become what it became in the end. And there were reflections that I had never made on my journey and my story, and different points and conclusions that I never would have come to had I not sat down to write it. And I finished it in so I ended up writing it in a couple of months. I wrote it in August of 2020. I think it took me around a month, and then I spent almost a year editing it with an editor. And so we did 3 revisions and we finished it in April of 2021. And since then, I have been applying to agents, applying to publishing houses. It's been really, really hard, like rejection after rejection. And I'm at the point now where it's like, okay, I'm going to give one more try. And then I think I might just move into the self publishing world, which has I actually learned the other day that one of my favorite Canadian poets, self published her first book, and then she got picked up and got famous through that. So I'm like, maybe I just need to um, go that route and let go of this idea that, there's only one way to publish or only one way to do things. And so that is like kind of the last thing. I'm just seeing like if this competition works, this last one that I'm going to enter for, and then if not, I'm going to self-publish it. And so I'm super, super excited to get the story out there. And yeah, I would recommend to anyone who's been through trauma, anyone who's struggling to make sense of their past, to write about it, because it was the best time spent just for myself.
Yeah, and I feel like it's about trusting your journey with when it comes to the
Mm-hmm.
publishing, and then when it comes down to the writing, sometimes you write things down, and then when you come back to those things like months or weeks later, you can actually feel those things again and feel how much you've changed and what you've come through and how you grew from those things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And so when it comes to your journey, if there was one thing that you could change, what would it be?
Um, I don't think I would change anything. I think that there's so many things that for years that I lived with regret around. Like, I wish I never married him. I wish I never, um, even around my life in Abu Dhabi, like, I wish that I didn't spend so much money starting my business there and then only to move a few months later, right? There's so many things that you wish you didn't do, but those things are actually what shaped, who you are. Like, had I not had this extreme mental health struggle where it took me, a decade since I knew something was wrong with me. It took me a decade to finally get the right treatment and the right care. And that was like the hardest time of my life. And I felt so alone and so, invalidated. And at the same time, that is what makes me have so much empathy and be able to connect to and relate to and help so many other people who are going through the exact same thing. Right. And so, had I not been through all these things, my addiction, my mood disorder, my marriage, I don't think I would be who I am today.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. And what about if there was one thing, one day, or one step in the process that you could live again? Which one would it be?
You know what it would be? It would be, so there's this time in sobriety called the pink clouds.
Okay.
And this is the time when you've gotten through your withdrawal. So for everyone, it's at a different point in sobriety, but it's usually between like for me, it was like day 14 to day like 30. And this is when you've gotten through the withdrawal. And every freaking day, you're just like, oh my God, my life is beautiful. I'm up at 5 a.m. This sunrise is making me cry. Like every single moment, you're just like, wow, I am the luckiest person because I get to live this life. And I know a lot of people actually get through the pink cloud and then they go back to drinking because after you get through the pink cloud, normal life sets in and you're like, man, life is hard.
Yeah.
Life isn't easy. And so this was like the best time in my life or not the best time in my life, but the pink clouds were like the happiest part of sobriety. And I think often I need to just hold on to that memory and remember that contrast because it's like it's clarity and contrast, right? Like you've experienced the depths of these hangovers and now you've experienced the joy of being substance free, and it's constantly remembering, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, that we need to hold close to us or else the likelihood of relapsing is much higher.
Yeah. Yeah, no, fair enough. Do you think that that pink cloud happens because with the alcohol you were a bit numbed and so it's like
Yeah,
your feelings, both your emotion and then your physical sensations are just coming back to life in a way?
absolutely. 100%.
No, okay. Um, and so when are you like completely sober or would you sometimes have a drink or is it just like no alcohol anymore at all since then for you?
Yeah, I'm completely sober. I did have a drink at one point after my 1 year, and I it was a great experience for me and I actually kept it private off my social media for a long time because I felt that people would judge me or invalidate me or not think that I was actually sober yoga girl, which is what I go by on social media. But I actually think when I finally shared that part of my journey, it made me more relatable to my clients because most people do not get sobriety on the first time. But I know that if I ever start drinking again, I'm going to fall back into that spiral, even if it just starts as one. One is going to become two, two is going to become three. And I know that I just have no desire to have this substance in my body at all. So
Hmm.
I am completely sober. I definitely have moments where I am curious and I think about it, but I know that I'm so much happier and healthier alcohol free. So I don't drink it at all.
Okay. And is it a challenge for you to like, if people don't know you and they invite you out for a drink and you order something non-alcoholic, is it do you find it difficult to explain to people that you just don't consume alcohol?
So, in the very early days, it was really, really hard. Now that I sort of have this social media persona as being sober yoga girl, I find it's easy. I find that people respect me, but I think it needs to be a line drawn in the sand, unfortunately, of like, I am sober. Because if you just say, like, oh, I'm on antibiotics, or oh, I don't feel like it tonight, or I'm driving, people will pressure you. And that's mostly a reflection of their own relationship with alcohol. It's not about you. It's, when you say that you're not drinking, it's holding up a mirror to them, and they're thinking about their drinking. And so if everyone around the table is drinking equally as much as them, then they feel less self-conscious about their own drinking. And so what I've learned over time, it has nothing to do with me, but in the early days when I said I wasn't going to drink, everyone was like, well, can't you just cut back? Why do you need to cut? Why do you need to quit altogether? Whoa, 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 don't get too crazy saying, you're being sober. Like, and oh, come on, just have one. And so I would deal with that pressure around me. And it was until I came out and said, look, I'm 90 days sober. I never want to drink again. Then all of a sudden people started respecting me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do say to my clients, I know it's so hard to be vulnerable and so hard to share with people, this is what I'm going through. But if you say to people, look, I'm not drinking because I'm struggling with my mental health, or I'm not drinking because I'm having a problem with it's like something will switch within them where they'll start to just kind of leave you alone. And I've found that being open and honest has been like the key for me. And so I don't really struggle with it anymore. Even when I meet new people, I just identify myself as, this sober yoga girl. But I definitely think having that identity has helped me a lot, and it's not easy for majority of people.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how earlier you were saying that there was a shame around, alcohol addiction, but in a way, sometimes there is also shame in being sober. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's like you just don't fit that norm anymore. And
Yeah.
so it's just people find you not weird, but they just can't comprehend.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, to go to the conclusion questions, what would you like to say to the 2017 Alex?
Oh man. I look back and I had no idea how much I had a narrative in my own head that was shaping my reality. And I think we sometimes don't see in yoga, they're referred to as the kleshas, which are the veils or the obstacles. And we sometimes don't see how much our own thinking, our own judgments, our own self judgments are shaping our reality and our experience of the world. And that was what kept me tied down and locked into so many spirals, so many negative headspaces, so many, that was the root of my suffering. And so if I could say anything to myself, it is to really have the courage to step back and get curious about like what of my thoughts right now are fact and what is my own story, right? And I'll give an example. Like I had this constant thing of like, I am a bad person. I am a bad person. It was like this thing, this loop in my head, because I have broken this person's heart, I am a bad person. And it took me like years to realize this is a story that I'm telling myself that is putting myself in that suicidal headspace, right? And if you can stop and be like, actually, I'm a good person, right? Actually, I'm a good person. And if you are able to identify those thinking patterns and replace them with positive thoughts, that was like the number one change for me.
Yeah. It's difficult sometimes to be able to actually compliment yourself because even that is not always socially accepted either.
Totally.
We're
Yeah,
just so used to beating ourselves up.
totally. And that's what holds you in these low headspaces. Like even I still even get it sometimes where I'm like, oh, I suck. No one's gonna want to do my yoga teacher training. No one's gonna sign up for my program, blah, blah, blah. And I'm an imposter. And then the other day I was walking back to my villa and I had to be like, Alex, you literally have an app. You have a yoga app. Like what are you talking about? Like you're not an imposter. But we get into these loops that shape our perception of reality.
Yeah, and I think it's normal, and we just have to welcome those bad thoughts, but then just tell them, okay, now you can go. They just
Hmm.
not hold on to them, just and not reject them either, just passing through like any other thought.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And what would you say that you're the most proud of?
I think I am the most proud of being able to create the life that I have now. I'm just so proud of myself for really working hard to make this dream a reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you can really be, I don't know, thankful and just grateful for your own work and for your own self as well.
Mhm.
And so, where can we find you on social media if anyone wants to, listen to your podcast and just see your programs and everything you have to offer?
Yeah, so my personal Instagram is Alex McRobs, and my community is the Mindful Life Practice. And I also have Sober Yoga Girl podcast. And so you can find me on all those Instagrams, and maybe I'll share with you the links, Pamela, and then you can put them in the episode description.
Yeah, I sure
And
will.
then perfect. And then I can be found. The mindfullifepractice.com is kind of the home of everything that I offer.
All right. All right. Thank you. And then, so my last question is a question that I ask to every single one of my guests. And I'd like to know what makes you special.
What makes me special? Oh, that's a wonderful question. I think what makes me special is my ability to keep going and to overcome and to have the courage to live a life that is so different than what my family and friends are choosing. And that is something that I should be proud of.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like in your journey, there is a lot of stepping out of the norms and of just being yourself and standing by who you are.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, all right. Thank you so much, Alex, for accepting my invite and sharing your story on my podcast. I really enjoyed our talk.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. And hopefully we can maybe see us sometimes in the world, or, you never know where the life will lead us somewhere.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Roadie Psychology. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the episode, please give me little stars on your favorite listening platform and subscribe to be the first to listen to the next ones. You can also follow me on Instagram @Roadie Psychology and invite your friends to join us on this journey through psychology. If you have any comments, questions, or if you feel like participating in the podcast, feel free to send me a little message. See you soon for another journey.